teaching this skill, yes, then you should know this. Okay? And this whole idea of bilingual education, I was talking actually to Carmine over lunch. We were talking about, one of the little girls I'm working with right now is a Ukrainian girl who came to the United States. She's adopted here, but she's blind. And she's in 4th grade now. She's having lots of problems. And one of the things I found myself doing is I went into the classroom, and I just closed my eyes and I listened to the teacher. And I thought, how many things is she talking about that if I did not have sight any time in my life, I could not even conceptualize? So what does blue mean to a person who's been blind all their life? What does night mean? What is day? All of these things become concepts that may be very difficult. I don't think we as teachers do a very good job in bilingual education, thinking about there are cultural implications around language and the fact that the child oftentimes holds part of their knowledge in one language and part of their knowledge in another language. And I'm asking this kid to constantly code switch. And they may or may not have the skill to do this, which is an issue here. This kid's going to be impacted in both languages. Okay? So some of that falls out. So it's again, a very interesting kind of situation, but you're right. Probably one of the big issues here is that this is not the work this kid is going to, he's not prepared to come into this and perhaps do it very effectively. Right? Now, why? That becomes a big issue. All right? How about this next ARC? Let me see in this one with Mr. Thompson. Issues. Somewhere. They might have been hiding. Nah, you didn't do your work, okay? No, it is. I shouldn't have done 2 of those. All right? What we've got here is the kid's doing pretty good. First he runs into the classroom. There's not a lot of direction, so he runs over to the drums, and he wants to be in the drums a little bit, and he gets directed back over to the class. He does okay. Until they start singing. He sings a little bit beyond the class. We're getting ready for spring recital. Sings a little bit behind the other students. Why might a student do that? Okay, he can't hear. He doesn't necessarily know what's going on. He's doing the best job he can to simply mimic. All right, whatever he's got, because he knows he's supposed to be doing something. And one of the other kids say, Randy doesn't do this very well. He's kind of cheating. He's making it sound terrible. And Randy decides to then have another little meltdown. All right. So what's going on here? What do we find out from this? What seems to be the function of the behavior? Escape and avoidance. Okay, what triggers it? Some message of ridicule or failure or some sort of situation going on. And what happens when this happens? He's kind of out of the task. And in this case, they actually called the principal. The principal came in and removed him from the classroom. So what happens? He gets to escape the task. All right, in terms of what's going on, the bad situation. And then finally, you've got a teacher interview with Judy Swanson, who's one of the teachers, and you get a little bit more information.
I want to mention how many times the principal of the school that I go to will reward the child for calming themselves down by giving them either candy or
I get amazed by just even going to the office. Kids are sent to the office. And how many times, first of all, especially in CPS, and about this time of year, what do the rooms start feeling like? Hot. What does the office feel like? Cool. All right? Kids can go down to a cool, air-conditioned office or sit in a hot room. God, let me think about that one for a minute. All right? And once I'm... Yeah. No, yeah. I better go check on Billy. I don't know how many times I've been there, and the kid, the 7-year-old will go, could you run this note to Mrs. Smith? And you get to know what's going on in the school. People come in and say, hi. The office is actually kind of a fun place to be. Nothing. Okay? But you're right, oftentimes. And we, again, will teach kids sometimes. Sometimes kids will learn, have a major blow-up, regain control, and you get reinforced for regaining control. Right? This is not a bad thing. When I was a kid, one time I lived by a golf course, and we found one of the flags from the golf course that somebody's taken and thrown into the woods. And so, being nice kids that we were, took it back up to the clubhouse, and guess what they did? They gave us each a bottle of pop and a candy bar. That flag came up missing about twice this summer, okay? We would steal the sucker, hide it in the woods for a couple of days, take it back, get a candy bar and a bottle of pop, okay? That was a good thing. Don't tell them what golf course this is. I just told you. All right, so in this case, we're kind of looking at what's going on. Source 5, academic tasks are, seem to be the problem. The teacher talks about that we know it's going to happen, but it's unpredictable as to which one it's going to happen with. What might that tell you? If that's true. Again, you always have to worry about whether the teacher's telling you the truth. They're telling you what they think is the truth, but that may not be the truth. They know that it's going to usually be around an academic task, but I really can't tell you what task it would be. If that's true, one of the things that might trigger me is that this is more around confusion. There might be a confusion piece that plays into this. If the kid doesn't understand what's being asked and he can do it today and not tomorrow, he may not have understood what you're asking for him to do today. Once he understands it, he can do it in some cases, but not always. All right? We also know that some of them are because he can't do it. Academic correction or failure triggers him. Difficulty following directions. What might that have to do with it? Language and language understanding, okay? Get stuck on task demand. Again, am I clear about what's being asked of me to do? All right. Again, yells, screams, closes down. Not socially interactive with other peers and everything across the day. What does that tell you? Anything? Is that a concern for anybody? Yeah.
Well, it factors into community, but I'm the one that doesn't want that.
Zero in on that sucker.
It's communication.
Okay.
If he's having trouble communicating, it's going to happen everywhere.
Okay. So the communication, the whole thing, yeah, it's not just academics, it's a matter of social interaction and everything else, all right? And consequence of plan, ignore, and removal from class. What do both of those basically result in? The kid gets to escape or avoid. All right. Now, thinking about this, what would you need to begin to do before you could build a good intervention plan for this kid? Yeah.
Wouldn't you need to kind of clarify whether or not his language issues are related to his hearing impairment as opposed to like a learning disability or something of that nature?
Absolutely. There's plenty of information here to suggest that something's breaking down around task demand kind of situations. Is it a skill deficit? Right? And if it is, what is that skill deficit? We were talking at lunchtime. Somebody was asking me a question. One of the things you've always got to ask yourself when there's a problem, especially around an academic, is this a can't or won't? Is it I can do it, I just don't want to do it? If that's the case, it's a motivational issue. All right? And again, which is expectancy and value. If I can't, it's a skill issue. You can't improve a skill issue by increasing motivation. I've got to teach the skill. I can't take a kid who can't read and say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I've got $5 here if you're going to read now. That's not going to make a difference. Okay, I've got to teach them to read. So is this a situation now? We've got the hearing impairment. Is it the fact that he's not wearing his hearing aids? You were making a comment about the nature of his conductive loss of hearing aids. You want to talk about that?
I was concerned that the conductive loss may fluctuate. If it was sensory neuro, then it would be very different. But with the conductive loss and the hearing aids, in sometimes, not in sometimes, what else was going on? And in fact, having the hearing aids might make it harder at different times rather than helping him. And the specific speech errors that he was making really did also seem to be connected in that regard. So I felt like it was a lot connected to the type of hearing loss that he had.
Now, I will absolutely guarantee you no typical teacher will have any knowledge of that at all. They're going to look and say, hearing aids, plug those puppies in and let's go. All right?
The other thing that really sticks out to me is that there's no reference to ESL at all. And even when the teacher talks about it, she says, oh, well, he's only been with us about 4 months, and he came from Texas, but I don't think he was there that long. Well, I don't care if he has a hearing loss or not. If you bring somebody in and has lived here for less than a year, and all the academic doesn't know English, so, you know, it's like they're not looking at it at all, regardless of his hearing loss, which is just gonna play a bigger impact than that, but just to assess his English base, and if they're giving him work that's in English, and, you know, but that's the biggest thing that I think.
Right.
We need to look at his hearing loss and everything else.
Okay. So clearly, the issue is we've got to look and see what's being asked of him, and does he have what it takes to be able to do those things.
I have a situation where the child has only been in this classroom for 2 weeks. Prior to that, it was homebound because of his behavior, and then prior to that, it was with a different teacher within the same school that he's back in now. However, it's been a long time since that teacher has seen and worked with that child. Who exactly should I be interviewing? Because this teacher doesn't know him well, and in fact, I had to step in because the teacher really didn't have much to do with him because he has a one-on-one aide who seems to be doing everything for him. So, do I interview the new staff? Do I try to think that that's valid information I'm getting from the old staff? I'm not real sure.
Okay. Let me open that up and see what people think. What do you think about that? Who should she be talking to? All right. One is a paraprofessional. Why?
Because they're the child, they're the person that's with the child the most.
All right. They're working with the person right now. Okay, so they might get a sense. They may have a pretty good idea of what's going on. All right. Who else might you want to talk to? Anybody? Home? Yeah. If this kid was being homebound, if you know, we can get that. Sometimes it wasn't necessarily a choice in a behavior thing like that. Parents in the school oftentimes are not in great places when you start to get to that situation. What could the former teacher tell me that would be helpful? Okay. I might know about what was going on. It also could give me a sense of, is this a continuity issue? Were these behavior problems then, and they're simply continuing now maybe to a greater or lesser extent? So if that were a question, that's one of the people that could answer that. If she's going to help me understand what's going on with him right this second, probably not real helpful, but she could certainly help me get some sense of history to it. All right? The teacher that I'm working with right now, one of the things that they might be able to help me if I've got a student who's having problems, what's the nature of the tasks right now, and her or his assessment on can this kid do this. Now, if the kid's only been there for 2 weeks, they probably don't know. My gut levels, the kid probably has not been assessed to find this out. It's just an issue of that, well, he's supposed to be in 4th grade, let's do 4th grade work, see what happens. And I might want to get a sense of that, and the teacher might be able to. So it kind of depends on what the question is you're trying to get asked as to who you might want to talk to. I also oftentimes ask parents, are there any other structured interactions this kid takes part in? So maybe he goes to Sunday school. Maybe he's part of a Boy Scout troop. Maybe he's part of a sports team. I will oftentimes ask permission to contact those people to see, are the kinds of issues we're facing here also happening there? Or does he seem to be doing fine in those situations? How does he handle other structured activities in which it's not the parents? Sometimes that can be really, really helpful. Again, sometimes you can't get permission to do that, but if you can, that's worth a phone call sometimes. All right. Basically trying to look at the idea of what's going on here. What you're ultimately going to do then is kind of set up a behavior problem pathway. And these sheets that you had, the first 5 sheets, you got a bunch of different sample things in there. But I want to get a sense of what's going on. So transition with loose expectations and low structure, academic task demand in which the student is confused or lacks knowledge or skills, seems to be the kind of environment that you're asking for trouble with. All right? Is challenging task demand, confusion, lack of knowledge or skills, ridicule trigger the behavior. All right. Problem behavior, the student engages in verbal or vocal protest, student escalates in verbal social withdrawal, and he gets to avoid the situation. That seems to be what's happening. Now what you want to do is try to figure out what are we going to do about it. Now the issue comes down to, again, you've got to get some more information for this kid. We've got to figure out why those tasks are confusing. Why are those tasks, why does that trigger? Is it a lack of skill, which looks very much like this is a skill issue in terms of maybe the hearing loss is creating a situation that he has not ever acquired the skill. His bilingual situation playing a role in there. And probably in the interview it talked about the fact that he didn't seem to come from a strong academic program in Mexico. This kid may not have a history of much really meaningful education that he can bring to the table. And there's a general lack of just overall material that he's got that he can bring to a situation. So there's lots of reasons this kid could be having problems, and we need to figure out what those are. Those are all going to play a role in the intervention for this kid. Is any of that a fast fix? No. One of the things when you do escape and avoidance is you've got to realize that usually two things are going to happen simultaneously right off the bat. We're going to start teaching the child, if it's a skill or knowledge, we're going to start teaching those skills and knowledge. All right? We're also going to have to reduce the demand at the current time to get to a level that they can be successful at. I've got to bring the material to a level where there's a 75-80% chance of this kid being successful, because most kids won't continue to work without at least that level of success. Now that means I've got to understand what that level should be, and we don't have any of that information yet for this kid. So I've got to get that assessment information so I can bring the material down, and I probably have to give this kid not the appropriate thing of a replacement behavior and say, if you need to escape, what can you do that will allow you to escape without disrupting the classroom? So I'm going to probably have to give this kid a safety valve. And that might be a break card, or it might be some kind of a situation that says, I've got a desk over there. If you feel overwhelmed, get up, move over to that desk. I'll get to you as quickly as I can. But I'm going to give him something to do. What is the function of his using that? Escape. So it doesn't help the behavior. It actually still allows him to escape, but it's a more socially appropriate method now than what he's using now, until such time as I can get it that he doesn't need to escape. So escape is kind of a funny behavior. It's one of those that you've got to deal with it realistically. I've got to give him a way to escape until such time that he doesn't need to. That make sense? All right. Let me shut up and see what questions you've got. Comments, concerns, other issues that are going on. Does any of this make sense today? Is this helpful at all? Okay. We'll let them go 10 minutes early. Is that going to be a loss, a big problem? Questions? Comments?
In all these data, teachers and interviews, second grade student would be valid to interview that student as some data or not?
I'm not sure of the question.
This student, Randy, to
Uh-huh.
interview him.
Yeah, you can interview him.
Source of data.
Sure.
Valid.
It's a source. I mean, part of the issue is that you've got to realize that there's a developmental issue there. What are the kind of questions I could ask him? What might you want to ask Randy in this situation?
What's your favorite subject? What's your least favorite subject? How do you feel about, the others in class when they say things to you?
Okay.
How does it bother you? Why do you think so-and-so is always mad at you, or why do you think?
I might want to say one of the things that happens, it seems that a lot of times you get very upset when what's going on? Why do you think, what's happening with that? He's the only one that can tell me what I'm feeling, or what he's feeling, right? So, don't be afraid to be incredibly direct. Here is the concern. I'm going to tell you this concern in as clear as behavioral terms as I can that a second grader would understand, and say, can you help me understand why you might do this? How does that help you? What's going on? I've had situations where kids talked out all the time, and it was like, why do you do that? Well, because the teacher doesn't call on me. Now, does that mean that's true? No. But quite frankly, when we took data, guess what? Teacher didn't call on him. Okay? Why? The teacher didn't call on him because he's always talking out. Why would I call on him? He's already getting it. And it was this kind of thing where they were like, duh, you're both just playing against each other here. Come on, let's get real.
Sometimes they come up with the best solutions, because, it's easy for you to tell them what to do to escape, but if it wasn't their own thought, then it's almost like training them, but if it's their own thought, a lot of times I just want to punch them, but it's okay, other than that, what's something else that you could do?
Right.
And sometimes they come up with their own solutions.
Yeah, and if you can get a kid who will really play that game with you well, one of the nice things is that they come up with it. The odds are it's probably something that they would do. You know, they're not going to generate the idea like we might generate that's very socially appropriate, but just really, I get really crazy in terms of, a lot of my work, especially my earlier work, was on social skills. Go out on the playground sometime and see how kids actually initiate social interaction. And then look at any social skills program and see, does any of them teach a kid to do this? No, there's no validity. So much of what we do. You know, it just makes me nuts. All right, go home and prosper.